Hello and welcome back to the Out of Spec Podcast. Repairing your electric vehicle costs about the same as repairing your internal combustion engine vehicle. Exciting news. Let's talk about it. Now, raise your hand if you've ever been in an accident with your car, particularly your EV. For those listening, I've risen my hand. That is because, yes, I've been in an accident with my car, my Rivian R1T. I was in an accident and pretty dreadful experience. Costed $33,000 to repair that thing. We'll get into more of that later, but getting in an accident isn't fun. One of the biggest things you're concerned about is the cost. How much is it going to cost to repair my EV? Now, this data comes from Mitchell. Mitchell is a software solutions company. They provide software for a ton of collision centers, as well as Geico, Progressive, and State Farm to make the claims process easier, getting people paid, tracking what vehicles need to be fixed. Mitchell tracks that for these companies, which means they get a ton of data from the types of vehicles that are being fixed to the price of vehicles that are being fixed, what type of vehicles. They have all of that. And so they are perfect for knowing how EVs are changing in terms of repairability throughout time. And they've released plugged-in EV Collision Insights 2024 year in review. And I'll just read this off the top before we go into some more of the segmented statistics that I have. Claims frequency for collision damaged repairable battery electric vehicles rose to 2.71% in the US and 3.84% in Canada in 2024, a year-over-year increase of 38% and 34% respectively. A 38% increase in the amount of battery electric vehicles that are getting in accidents and have claims. What are you guys doing? You guys need to drive better. Now, yes, I'm one of those people that had an accident in 2024, but the point is that that's a huge increase. But 2.71% of, I guess, the fleet that Mitchell knows of from these insurance companies had claims for damage, accidents, right, that were reported to insurance companies. Now, CNBC reported that battery electric vehicles and hybrids represented 20% of all new U.S. vehicle sales in 2024, and Cox Automotive is predicted that number to climb 25%. According to Argonne National Laboratory and Electric Autonomy, there are over 100 different types of battery electric vehicles sold in the US and 75 in Canada, with dozens more expected by the end of this year. Now, you'll see here through this graph, of course, we love graphs. Visualizing data is best. And you can see here for mild hybrids, you can see slowly increases. Then you have plug-in hybrids. You can see it actually hasn't increased too dramatically. Now, U.S. total loss frequency for battery electric vehicles increased 10.2% in 2024, up from 8% in 2023. This is commensurate with other propulsion types, which also experienced a total loss gain of nearly 2 percentage points as vehicle values continue to decline and catastrophic claims activity increased in the second half of the year. So you have to think more EV were being reported to have claims, accidents, incidents that are being reported to insurance. On top of that, you are seeing a decrease in EV values. So EVs are, every single year that goes by, there are more EVs on the road, which means there are used EVs, which means that the values of those vehicles are decreasing. On top of the fact that depreciation is a pretty big topic in the EV community as a whole right now. That being, it's an emerging technology, right? We see incidents like the Toyota BZ4X. The 2025 model year costs less than the 2024 model year. The 2024 model year is obsolete to the 2025. And so that, right, if the newer version is cheaper, then that decreases the value of the older version even more. This exaggerates some of the depreciation that we see. On top of the fact that this is an emerging technology, a lot of people are going to be buying new versions, right? There's a lot of good lease deals. It makes the used buyer market not so hot. And so you're seeing depreciation of vehicles increase, right? I mean, we see the Tesla Model Y in 2022, you could buy for like 70 grand. That same vehicle you can buy for like $25,000 with just 50,000 miles. And so depreciation is a big part of this. And how insurance adjusters, right, people who are finding out the price to repair a vehicle once it's in an accident and kind of helping you through that process. Insurance adjusters, they use a calculation to determine whether a vehicle is deemed a total loss or not. It depends on what insurance agency you use, but it's about 50% of the cost to repair compared to the value of the vehicle. So if you have a vehicle, an EV that is worth $100,000, if the repair cost is $55,000, they're more likely to deem it a total loss because the repair of the vehicle costs half or a little more than half than the actual value of the vehicle, right? If you have a vehicle that's worth $100,000, but the repairs are only, quote, only $20,000, they're less likely to deem it a total loss because the repairs aren't that comparative to the actual value of the vehicle. And with depreciation, we're seeing these values from $100,000 down to 75, down to 50, more and more. But repair costs are the same. Repair costs are consistent of whether it's repairing an old vehicle or a new vehicle. It's the same parts. And so while repair costs are consistent, the value of the car is decreasing. And if you have a lot of older battery electric vehicles on the road, right, every passing year that goes by, we get EVs that are older and older. That means you're going to see an increase of the amount of total loss claims. And so that kind of summarizes what's happening there. On the other side, I imagine a lot of EVs are being deemed a total loss, even when they aren't actually a total loss. When I got in an accident with my R1T, I was told that, hey, there's a probability that your car is deemed a total loss, even though the value of the repairs, which was like $33,000, isn't near the value of the car, where the value of my car was like 78. And so what I've been told is a lot of insurance adjusters don't want to deal with EVs. It's a new technology. It's a new technology. They don't want to deal with some of the high voltage systems. On top of that, if something like, let's say, a dent, it happens in the battery pack, insurance adjusters are going to want to replace the entire battery pack. We know how expensive battery packs are. Battery packs can sometimes make up 25% of the actual cost to make that vehicle. And so with that, if they have to replace the entire battery, that increases the repair costs, and then they're going to end up, deeming it a total loss. When in most scenarios, right, a simple dent in a battery pack or a scratch or something isn't going to, right, change how effective or reliable the battery is. But in terms of insurance, they're going to want to make sure that the actual vehicle structure itself is back to new. It's as brand new. And if they have to replace the entire battery to do that, they're going to do it. If it costs more, they're going to deem it a total loss. Hopefully that all makes sense. Even more. Moving on, battery electric vehicle values decline more rapidly than any other propulsion type due to pricing changes brought on by several OEMs, improving manufacturing costs, increasing average vehicle age, and adding to consumer concerns about high voltage battery health for used battery electric vehicles. Exactly the points I just made. At the close of this year, the average total loss market for battery electric vehicles was $33,346 in the US, down 22% from 2023, and $40,203 Canadian in Canada, down 18.5% from 2023. Now, here's where it gets good. For repairable battery electric vehicles, average claims severity was $6,236 in the US in 2024, a year-over-year increase of 3%, and $7,241 Canadian dollars in Canada, a year-over-year increase of 2%. In comparison, repairable ICE-powered automobiles had the lowest average severity of all powertrains in 2024 at $5,066 in the US. However, when looking at just newer ICE vehicles, which are similar to electrified alternatives in their complexity and cost of repair, average severity was much closer to that of a battery electric vehicle and plug-in hybrids, to $6,127 in the US, $6,818 Canadian in Canada. So look, the price to repair an EV is just about that of repairing an EV when it's repairable, right? Not deemed a total loss when it's something mild that can, be repaired at a collision center. Now here is an even better graph. I thought this was super interesting. Average repairable severity. You can see all battery electric vehicles. That'll include all vehicles, including Tesla. But 2024, you can see, right, it's right above $6,000. Repairing a Tesla, just Teslas, was a little bit above that in 2024. Interesting enough, in 2022, it was way above that as well. And so clearly the price to repair just Teslas is just a little bit more than the average battery electric vehicle. So if you don't drive a Tesla, it's about $6,000 to repair it on average if you file a claim. For Teslas, it's just about, I want to say 6,300, maybe $400 if you have a Tesla. Moving on, as electrification increases in vehicle architecture, so does the degree of system interconnectivity, what we kind of known as software-defined vehicles. Software-defined vehicles using end-to-end software, where the entire vehicle is using some sort of computer, an ECU, to determine the condition of the vehicle, to help it, be more connected in terms of software, so diagnostics, and it just allows for things like over-the-air updates to change everything from the health to the use of the battery. Now, this level of electrical complexity in digital communication results in an increased likelihood of disruption to sensitive components, potentially away from the primary point of impact. Consequently, the number of diagnostic fault codes increases, as does the need for ADAS calibrations. Really good point. When I got in an accident with my R1T, they calibrated it so it drives well in Driver Plus on highways, but the blind spot monitoring system went out. And so I have an appointment with Rivian scheduled that has to be, calibrated from Rivian themselves. So you have to think, right, that's time, that's money. These are things that are going to have to be, that are adding to the complexity and the price of these claims. And it's just making more EVs complicated. But, what would you rather have? Over-the-air updates or cheaper insurance costs? Let me know. Last year, the per estimate average for calibration was 1.61 for battery electric vehicles compared to 1.45 for ICE vehicles. And so per estimate average between EVs and ICE vehicles really isn't that different. So that really tells you, right, how even connected in terms of like ADAS, a lot of modern ICE vehicles are today. And so as much as we talk about software-defined vehicles and electric vehicles, even those internal combustion engine vehicles have a lot of the same low voltage wiring, a lot of the same driver assistance systems that are in EVs. And so they're having to go through the same calibrations. For EVs, 88.44% of parts used to repair the vehicles were OEM parts, compared to 68.81% for internal combustion engine vehicles. So if you drive an ICE vehicle, less likely that you're using OEM parts compared to if you're driving EV, you're more likely using OEM parts. 11.34% of parts repaired. So when an accident happens, 11.34% of those parts are being repaired compared to 13.4% for an internal combustion engine vehicle, which I think also speaks to the complexity of EVs, right? EVs have less moving parts. You got to think an internal combustion engine vehicle, transmission, got the entire engine block. You got all sorts of parts dealing with, the stuff in it, an ICE car, how gas cars work, all of that. There's more of it. There's going to be more parts compared to an electric vehicle. Now, moving on even further, top 5 battery electric vehicle model claim frequency by region. So you have the United States, you have Canada. The Tesla Model Y is the best-selling EV in the United States. So it's same thing with the Model 3, likely that you're going to have the most claims. Ford Mustang Mach-E, very high, sale rate. It's likely that's going to have higher claims. In Canada, on the other hand, it's the Hyundai Kona that is getting a lot of claims, followed by the Chevy Bolt, which is interesting, right? These cheaper EVs, also aging EVs. And then in Canada, then you get the Ford Mustang. For the United States, followed by the Ford Mustang is the Tesla Model S and X, which, the Tesla Model S has been on sale since 2012. So makes sense, right? You get in an accident in that thing, it's probably deemed a total loss immediately. And the Model X has been on sale since late 2015, 2016. So again, that vehicle, there are a lot of them on the road, but it's interesting we're not seeing more of any other vehicle. I would think that maybe we would see something like, the Rivian R1S, the Chevy Bolt in the United States. I mean, especially the Chevy Bolt in the United States. I feel like that has pretty good sales in the United States. It's either that the sales aren't that significant compared to the amount of Tesla vehicles. And so, the accident rate is going to be the same, but because there's more Teslas on the road, you're going to see more Model S and X repairs. Or this means Model S and X drivers suck. You guys are worse at driving, and so you guys have higher claims. So Tesla Model S and X drivers, I'm calling out everyone today. Tesla Model S and X drivers, you guys got to drive a little bit better. But yeah, that's pretty much all of the data from this here. I mean, it's absolutely cool kind of breaking this down, learning that repairing an EV actually isn't that much different to repairing an internal combustion engine vehicle. And then also being able to see what regions, California, Canada, you guys not great at driving EVs. You have more claims. A Tesla Model 3 and Y, of course, you guys, one of the most popular EVs, two of the most popular EVs, I mean, the most popular EVs in North America. So it makes sense that you guys are on the top of the claims list. Same thing with the Ford Mustang Mach-E, even the Chevy Bolt in Canada. Hyundai Kona, as well as the Tesla Model S and X, you guys, maybe you guys just aren't good drivers, okay? And then the cost itself, right, comparable between all of the EVs, the types of parts that are being used among EVs versus internal combustion engine vehicles. Most collision repair centers are mainly using OEM parts versus third-party parts. More ADAS and vehicle calibrations are pretty similar between internal combustion engine vehicles and battery electric vehicles. And so, 1.61 for EVs, 1.45 for internal combustion engine vehicles, not too different. So that just means that, a lot of the same systems we're seeing in EVs are also in internal combustion engine vehicles, which speaks, I think, also to the price being similar, speaks that internal combustion engine vehicles are getting really complicated. I was in an internal combustion engine Cadillac today, so many moving parts. I mean, this thing is teched out, and I'm thinking to myself, this is pretty cool. But then on the flip side, right, it's all teched out here. Then you go underneath the hood. It's got a transmission. It's got an engine. So many moving parts. I feel like it's going to break and it's too complicated. Versus an EV, right? The tech can make sense because, you have this giant battery and motors, and that is, inverters. That's really it. It's like really simple. And so internal combustion engine vehicles are getting more complicated than ever before. But yeah, this is pretty interesting. I thought this was super cool. So I wanted to share it with you guys. Do you guys like these statistic breakdowns? Statistics are pretty cool. So would you guys like to learn more about EV sales as a whole when it comes to statistics? I know I just released that Toyota BZ4X video. You can check that out here on the iCard, but it's about Toyota's Chinese EV. Do you guys want to see more Chinese EV coverage? It was pretty mixed. Most people were saying yes, but some people were saying no. But it's not just that. Like, let me know what you guys want to see. But yeah, this is pretty exciting. EVs cost just as much to repair as internal combustion engine vehicles. That's awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Isaiah. This is the Out of Spec Podcast. Again, still thinking of that name. Podcast, news. We'll figure it out. And I'll see you guys in the next one.